Welcome to Suffering, American Edition. If you haven't seen the first video where I talk about Japanese cars and how their prices have changed in the past 5 years due to this stupid car market right now, you should probably watch that video first because that's the one where I explain how I do these calculations. If you're able to just follow along though, then sure, stick around. If you don't really care, you'll figure it out as you go along. I'm gonna make the math as foolproof as possible. Starting off this list is my former favorite Mustang growing up as a kid, which was the New Edge Mach 1. So what I have written here is that they used to average for around 10 to 12 grand in 2017. And as we can see here, their prices have gone up rather substantially. Some of these models are going for twice of what they used to. More importantly is they have a lot more mileage than they used to. And don't get me wrong, this is a great car with a great engine. It's the 4.6 liter that actually is 32 valve as opposed to the regular 16 valve. What really hurts me though are the Terminator Cobra prices. Now, to be fair, in 2017, the Terminator Cobras actually still held their value rather well. They were around 25 grand average, which is a very, very high number considering that that was a New Edge Mustang, which to most people is their least favorite Mustang. I like them growing up, but a lot of people like Fox bodies. They like everyone likes first gen Mustangs. That's literally the Mustangiest Mustang to ever Mustang because it's literally the first Mustang. A lot of them are going for like 30 grand value, it seems. Like they're definitely commanding some insane prices. You know, this is a car that I don't know. It's like they're cool as hell still, don't get me wrong, but there's a lot of other cars you can buy for that kind of money. The next car we're going to look at is the Dodge Viper 2nd generation, which I have written here as averaging for around 38,000 in 2017. This car, I mentioned it in my daily drive performance video, and the one I mentioned was blue with white stripes, I believe, and that's kind of like the poster child of the Viper for the 2nd gen. That's the one Doug DeMuro memed about, that he actually did daily drive, and that's what I was memeing about. I don't actually recommend you try to daily drive a 2nd generation Viper, or really any generation Viper for that matter. But the point is, they weren't stupidly insane prices back then, at least. Now they are stupidly insane prices. So it looks like 2nd gen Vipers. The one I'm looking at here is a rather pristine example, 10k miles, 120 grand. Again, in that poster child spec. Even if you want just some run-of-the-mill 2nd gen Viper, that's not like one of the RT10 Roadsters, you're looking at 70 grand still. And by the time you are okay with buying an RT10 Roadster, yeah, you can still get a 2nd gen for around like, you know, mid 40-ish grand. In fact, you can actually get a 3rd gen for the same price, and I'd probably just go for a 3rd gen at that point, because the 3rd gen Roadsters, to me at least, are a lot more bearable to look at than the 2nd gen ones were. The 5th gen Vipers have not fared any more well. What I recorded here is that in 2017, because this includes the SRT Vipers as well, I kind of just grouped them together for that calculation in 2017, the SRT Viper and the 5th gen Viper made by Dodge, because more or less they're the same car, alright? Those cars went for around 95-ish grand on average in 2017. They were not cheap cars, and to be fair, I did not include the ACR in this calculation, mostly because the ACR was literally brand new at the time, so there was no point in including it to a used car average. In this modern recalculation for 2022, I'm purposely going to filter out the ACR, as you've seen on this screen right now that there are no ACRs listed. By the looks of it, doubled/tripled in price. You know, I'll do the math on screen, but it's actually painful to look at. This was a car you could buy for sub 100 grand, a car I had the opportunity to buy when I was shopping around. I chose to buy C7 Z06 instead, which hindsight 2020, if past me knew that this car was going to appreciate this much, I would have bought the Viper. People tend to collect them, they tend to let them appreciate and sit around, and I was like, I'm not going to be able to enjoy a Viper knowing that its value is going to hold me back from enjoying it. Of course, if I could turn back time, I would have just told past me, hey moron, buy a Viper, just buy it. If it breaks, who cares? You could blow up its engine, you will still make the money back. You can go through clutches like candy and you will still make the money back. You can daily drive this moron, put like 50k miles on it, and you will still make the money back. Again, hindsight 2020, I'm not gonna kick myself over buying a Corvette instead, because the Corvette that I have now did serve its purpose, but missed opportunities did indeed happen, and this is one of my biggest regrets in my life. The next car we're gonna be looking at is the Pontiac Trans Am Firebird. So these cars, we're specifically looking at like, you know, the 90s models of Trans Ams. These cars were $8,500 on average back then. Now, unfortunately, only the first few listings that you see here are below that said value of $8,500. The rest of them already go over rather quickly, meaning that this car has indeed raised, but it's not really crazy compared to the other cars we've looked at so far. And I'm very happy I can say that. This is still a very obtainable dream car if it's something you like the retro styling, if you want a WS6 that has an LS1. They're fantastic cars, they're pretty reliable, they're easy to get parts for because they share a lot of parts with the F-body Camaros, so you'll find parts for them all over the place. The next car we'll look at is the C5 Corvette. Now, during the summer, Corvette prices were going quite stupidly insane of 2021. I would see C5s go for 5 grand higher than I remembered, C6s go for like 10 grand higher than I remember, and like C7s go for like 20 grand higher than I remember. It does look like that because it's winter and a lot of them are in storage and a lot of wives are probably nagging their husbands to sell the Corvettes so they can put the kids through college. And wintertime, that always seems to happen. C5 prices in 2017 were around 15 grand average. Regular Car Reviews, Mr. Regular, has also made a similar observation around that time. You could find decently running ones for around 12 grand. You could even spend 10 grand and just get a high mileage one. You could get clapped out ones for 6 grand and under. And because 15 grand was the average, that meant by the time you spent 15 grand in 2017, you bought a fairly decent example. By the time you spent more, you could get an even better example. If you spent 24 grand, you could actually just buy the Z06 model, and Doug DeMuro made a video talking about how those were the best bargain sports car for around 25 grand. I'm glad to say most of this, if not all of it, does hold true. It looks like you can still find a lot of these sub 15k. You know, I went through the whole first page and successfully found a lot of these listed for fantastic prices. I'm not even gonna bother doing the recalculation of this car just because it looks to me that they're still pretty decent. Now, the one thing you do have to consider is what I mentioned at the beginning of the video. They have more mileage now than they would have in 2017. So technically, even though the prices remain the same, you are paying more for it because there's more wear and tear on it. But again, it's an LS1. Its transmission's this car also had a really good transmission. It's a good powertrain. C6 Corvette. So the C6 Corvette I have recorded here as being around 21 grand average for the base models, with the Z06s going for 35 grand. Now, looking at their prices now, I believe they've gone up a bit, but not a lot. Not as bad as the summertime. So we're gonna filter out the clapped out examples and just go to the second page and start from there, and you can still find pretty decent ones for sub 20 grand if you're not super picky about mileage or it having like a fender bender. If you don't want a fender bender one and you just want a clean title, no accident, perfect car, you spend 23, 25 grand, you're getting a great C6, and that's good. Their prices remained relatively unaffected. The Z06 models, on the other hand, those ones it varies. It definitely varies. Some of them are just really out there. Some of them are okay, but it depends on what the owner thinks of the car. Some of them think it's a really special car, and it makes a little bit of sense when you consider that the C6 Z06 is likely the last Corvette ever to have its displacement number start with a 7, especially in the Corvette sense, and I don't ever see GM trying the 427 ever again. So the C6 Z06, some of them are still 50 grand right now, and they're way higher than the original 35 grand average because people started to realize how special they are. Now the next car is the Z28 Catfish Camaro. So the Z28 for the, I just call that generation the Catfish. It looks like a catfish. Everyone kind of calls it that. In 2017, these cars averaged around 8 grand. Now the Z28 model, this car, I believe it's an F body, and it also uses the LS1 just like the Corvette does. Starting from the second page onwards, it looks like they have gone up. There's a lot of them that are already past that 8 grand mark. But again, with just like the Firebird, they haven't gone up so high where I wouldn't recommend buying one. I still think this is a fantastic purchase, even for the ones that don't have the LS1 in them. The earlier Catfish ones, the ones that have the sunken in kind of eyes look, that don't have the LS1s in them, they're still a great car. They've aged well, they still make great power, they're easy to maintain, good to work on, find parts everywhere. And if you're looking for a sub 10 grand American muscle car, this is the place to look. This and the Trans Am are still fantastic buys. Take good care of them, I'm serious. You know, really preserve them for the future generation so these prices can stay these way. Now the next car I'm going to look at is actually a Dodge Challenger Hellcat. I actually have an asterisk next to this one because I did its calculation in 2019, not 2017, because in 2017 they were only 2 years used at the moment, so they didn't quite hit rock bottom. I also didn't really care to look at their prices back in 2017. In 2019, however, I did bother to look at them just out of curiosity, and it looks like when I averaged 25 when sorted by best deals first, they came out to be around 50 grand. And it looks right now, so first off, I'm going to have to sort away the accident example. examples because a lot of these cars were kind of abused because of clout culture. Now, the Challenger exists in a really funny state in the sense that it's still a really heavily indoctrinated clout culture car. Thankfully, it is still a new car that is still being produced, meaning that there's still more of them leaving the assembly line. So that's another reason it's cheap, because a lot of the Japanese clout culture cars that we talked about in the JDM video are obviously like 20 or so years out of production, meaning that when clout culture boys get to them and start destroying them, they're removing them from the pool. They're taking them out of the market, which then makes the remaining ones in the pool more valuable because there are less of them remaining. The Challenger's case, that doesn't matter as much. The next car I looked at is also a calculation I did in 2019, and it is a Shelby GT350, not the R version, just a GT350. This car in 2019 averaged for around 49 grand, so just underneath 50 grand. And this car is straight up a fantastic buy to this day. So I also did have to sort out salvage history and total loss reported, because there were a lot of these that were rather clapped out. You'll see me do a speed run of like, I think I found like 5 listings in a row that had like some kind of salvage or lemon history or total loss reported. If you sort those out though, okay, so while making this video, this is actually recorded in post, I finally found out the exact specific chart that shows the true average market value of cars. So the reason I don't listen to these above and below values, for example, let's look at the Shelby Mustang that I'm looking at right now on this page. There's one that's listed for $71,000 and another one that's listed for around $58,000. Yet both of them say they're only $200 above the market. What type of packages they have, like does it have Android Auto or backup camera, or like or how many owners did it have, or how much mileage does it have? I don't want to know that specific a thing. I just want to know the average price of a model, excluding extremely bad examples. And thankfully, I found this on the website that just automatically does it for any model you select. So here you see it's just the Shelby Mustang GT350 2019 fastback rear-wheel drive. They do have an R, but we're not going to do the R's price. I'm going to use this for most of the other videos from now on. This is not foolproof, however, because I went back and decided to try to see if I could calculate cars I've already done in previous videos, and as you can see, I've punched in Acura NSX first generation, and it straight up just says, we're sorry, we don't have enough pricing data available for this vehicle. So cars that are really rare, and I imagine ones that are only have like 20 or so active listings at a time, like a VR4 Mitsubishi 3K GT would also fall in that, I still have to just see whatever is for sale and then manually calculate what the average is. So in future videos, if you see me manually calculating, that's because it was not able to be run through this system. Otherwise, I'll just run it through this system next time to save myself time and save you guys the headache of trying to understand my math. Still find clean title, 1 or 2 or 3 owner examples, no accident reports for under 50 grand. And you get a 5.2 liter Voodoo engine. You get the best manual gearbox ever put in a Mustang, the Tremec. I absolutely appreciate your guys' feedback and your guys' contributions in the comment sections if you're wanting to help other people out, find out how much their car was worth then and how much it's worth now. If you haven't seen the Japanese equivalent of this video, I highly recommend that you go check it out. If you'd like to see me do one of these videos for the European cars I've kept track of, or even exotic cars I kept track of in 2017 and what they're worth now, make sure to subscribe and stay tuned for when those videos release. Other than that though, thank you guys for watching and see y'all next time. Bladed Angel out.